Hi, I'm Kenneth Sampson, and you are currently watching a video from the MII Senior Expo Take a Strand. We had the opportunity and privilege of inviting speakers to speak on their field of expertise and to educate us on their profession and how we can relate it to our strands and also to our daily lives, as well as to assist students if a career, field, or strand is right for them. Now, without further ado, we hope that you learn from the video.
In our past events of this year's Take a Strand. So Take a Strand is the first ever MI online expo that aims to introduce senior high school students to a variety of career paths that they can take based on their chosen strands and help junior high school students to gain a deeper understanding of what they will learn as part of their strand's curriculum. Please be reminded to have your cameras on and leave your mic on mute unless you are called upon during the Q&A portion. And a little tip, if you guys only want to see the speakers on your Zoom, please press the speaker view option found on the upper right corner of your screen. Today, we have the privilege of listening to another guest speaker that will share her expertise in the field of psychometry. But first, we would like to thank our sponsors. White Breeze Palawan Hotel, you may follow them on their social media accounts. On Facebook, they are White Breeze Palawan Hotel, and on Instagram, they are White Breeze Palawan. Also, Food Talk Supermart and the Regalado family. Without them, this event would not have been made possible. Now, today's talk will be a special feature from our guest speaker, Ms. Christine Era Reyes. She is currently the Guidance Counselor and Student Affairs and Client Relations Officer at Alpha Aviation Group. She will be representing the Humanities and Social Sciences strand and the Science, Technology, Engineering, and Math strand together by tackling the topic of psychometry. Let us give a warm welcome to Ms. Christine Reyes.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy that I had that opportunity to actually share to you my field or my field of expertise. I've been in this field for about 2 years because after 2 years, I took another licensure examination. So I focused on counseling. But however, up to this moment, I still have my license in Psychometrician and still currently practicing because this is still part of my duties and responsibilities as a licensed counselor. But anyway, before we begin, let me just share my screen. May I confirm if you can see my screen?
We can see it, Miss.
Okay, thank you. So again, we are going to talk about psychometrician. Now, maybe some of you, it's the first time to hear the profession since it's just kind of new. If I'm not mistaken, I graduated 2015 and I was I took the board exam as second batch. Meaning, if I'm not mistaken, this year is 2021 already. Let's say around 5 years ago, or let's say 4 years ago when this licensure examination was implemented. Now, what is psychometrician? Maybe some of you might confuse it with psychologist, right? Because it's first type the word starts similar from it. But let me have a distinct definition and difference of it from psychologist and psychometrician. Now, first, let's define. Here in my small and brief talk, we are going to talk about what is psychometrics, what are the functions of a psychometrician, basic education requirement, skills and competencies, and of course, career opportunities. What are the work or employment that you may apply for after having a degree, or shall I say a license in psychometrics. So first, let's define psychometrics. It is the branch of psychology that deals with development, administration, and interpretation of quantitative tests for the measurement of psychological variables such as intelligence, aptitude, and personality traits. Now, maybe everyone here, especially you're in senior high school and even junior high school, before you enter your school, most probably you took an examination. Okay, so everyone can relate and everyone had an experience of taking a psychological test. Now, technically, when we are using the word psychological test, it has a variety of tests in it. As what I have mentioned earlier, it has intelligence test. Usually, this is given for admission test. As an admission test. We also have aptitude tests and personality traits. Aside from that, we have lots of other standardized tests or psychological tool that we use to actually measure and have an understanding in a quantitative aspect of a human personality or mental health per se. So, psychometrician is a professional who has been registered and issued a valid certification of registration and professional ID card. So in short, you are able to pass the board examination under, of course, the Professional Regulation Commission of Psychometrics. Psychometrician is under the board or the Professional Regulatory Board of Psychology. So meaning we have similar mother department or mother board, and it is the psychology department or psychology regulatory board. So in short, psychometricians are the nurse of psychologists. Okay, so we do assist psychologists in implementing and administering psychological tests. And psychologists and even counselors, that was my master's degree, no? Psychometricians is a nurse to psychologist and guidance counselor. So the main job of a psychometrician is to administer a test. So here are some of the functions of a psychometrician. But anyway, before that, the education requirement for you to become a psychometrician is you should have a degree in AB or Bachelor of Arts or Bachelor of Science in psychology. So that's the minimum education requirement that you should pass before you are eligible to take such licensure examination. So again, for the functions, you, a psychometrician administers and scores objective and structured personality tests. We also interpret the results of the test that we administered and of course, write a report on these results. So usually we call it psychological report. And also, aside from that, we also test, design, and even construct table of specification in writing and item analysis. Now, writing and item analysis is part of constructing a standardized test. Of course, there's a scientific method and technicalities in creating a standardized test. That's why it's called standardized now, because it undergo a precise and very meticulous study under, again, statistical treatment, because we would like to have an overview of or an understanding of how human behavior or what is the human, shall we say, human personality, individual personality, aptitude, and intelligence reflected in a quantitative or a, shall I say, numerical value. Usually, very famous on it is the intelligence quotient, right? So, it for you to be able to know, to have an understanding if how high or how low an IQ of a person, we use a numerical value to as a representation of the level of intelligence quotient of an individual. So aside from that, we also conduct intake interviews as part of the psychological intervention. So before you begin with your therapies, counseling sessions with psychologist or counselor, usually a psychometrician is the one who will conduct an intake interview. So just the background of your history, background of your medications back then, and etc. And included also is giving you or administering you a psychological test as part of your profile. Aside from that, we also test and validate standardized norm sampling, conduct item analysis, and of course, scale development. These are all technical terms when we are talking about building or constructing a standardized test. And aside from that, we also do researches and writing manuals about the standardized test that we create. No? So basically, when you would like to become a psychometrician as your full-time job, dapat you are very into statistics, right? You should be fond of mathematics. So a fun fact, when back in my college, no, because as I have mentioned a while ago, my batch we were the second batch to take the examination. I thought there will be no mathematics in my in my course as a degree. So actually, I took up BS psychology, expecting that there will be less mathematics to deal with. But unfortunately, here I am. No, I need to be very familiar with statistics and be very analytical when it comes to the information, even the data derived from different psychological tests. So if you are very into it, no, in mathematics, why not? Statistics, if you are kung in Tagalog term, no, kung kinakain mo lang yung mga numbers or mathematics, it's very easy for you. Then I believe it's one of and you're into psychology, like you want to be you want to to be in a helping profession, then you are also good in math. I believe this is the best job or profession for you. Next is skills and competencies. So actually, most of these are very general. It's not just for psychometrician, but also for psychology. But to be more specific, most of the skills and competencies required from you when you would like to practice your profession as psychometrician is you really need to be statistically aligned, no? Just what I have mentioned a while ago. Aside from that, you should also have a good foundation in research and scientific foundation, meaning you are very well-rounded when it comes to research making or in researching, because it is one of your main job to research and create psychological tests. Now, why Miss Era? Why research is part of being a psychometrician if you're just going to create a standardized test? Because of course, before we create a structured or a standardized test, or shall I say personality test, intelligence test, aptitudes test, it is based on a research. So first and foremost, we conduct researches to know what are the background of a specific construct that we would like to create. For example, I would like to create a standardized test, or I was asked to create a standardized test about selfishness or procrastination or stress management. So before I jump into making the items, of course, of the test, I need to have I first need to conduct a research, so I may actually have the idea of my respondents about their stress level, how they cope with stress, and etc. Anything that is related to the construct or the topic of my standardized test. So it is one of the very important skills that you should have. You should be very patient also, because aside from creating, researching, administering the test, you should also know how to very patient how to create a psychological report. Now, making a psychological report is quite very tedious, no, right? Because it's very particular, very sensitive, because the psychological report is a written report and evidence of an individual's psychological well-being. So if you were not able to be very precise and cautious in measuring an individual's psychological aspect, it might really affect in a destructive way yung result dun sa client or dun sa patient. It's because syempre yun na yung basis ng psychological well-being niya because you conducted the test and etc. And of course you're a professional. So aside from that, dapat you are very patient when it comes to it. And aside from that, you should be very good in collaborating and even working in a team. Why? Because aside from doing researches, of course, you cannot make it on your own. So usually you're in a team. And of course, when you're administering the test, you should have a good interpersonal skills when dealing with the client or the patient. Especially back then, no, I remember I have this client. She's very agitated already. Maybe because I understand na meron na siyang pinagdadaanan or meron na siyang yun nga, may mental health condition na siya. But you need to be very sensitive to the need of your patient, because at that moment when you face your patient, of course hindi pa nila alam or we are still trying to know kung ano yung status nila, kung ano yung current condition nila. So you have to be very sensitive, at the same time attentive to their needs. And of course dapat ikaw yung mas pinakaunang merong stable mental health status, because you should really be very strong enough and also, again, uulitin ko, patient enough to deal with such clients. Next po, career opportunities, of course. Actually, we are very lucky because despite of the fact that psychometrician is new to the field or to the professional field, there is a growing demand about in our profession. Actually, we can work in hospitals or clinics. We can also work in schools. Usually, if you are working in a school as a psychometrician, you are under guidance office or admission office. Aside from that, we can also work in industries or government offices, as nowadays, because there's a lot of because of the mental health bill also, it's part of the consideration yung mental health status ng mga employees, no? So in industries, usually under HR tayo if you are working as a psychometrician, or in my case, I am working in an industry. It's not technically a school, but an aviation school. But it's more on it's not just a training school, but there's also a business side of it. I work as a guidance counselor. I handle not just the student, but also the employees. So we also conduct psychological tests. We also give psychological tests, not just to the student, but also to employees. That's it. Thank you so much. I hope I was able to give you a brief and a glimpse of my profession as a psychometrician. I am opening the floor if you have any questions, clarifications, or things that you would like to discuss or to share about the topic.
Thank you so much, Ms. Reyes. That was a very informative presentation. And I am sure that the students here today were able to learn a lot from your lecture. Now, we will be allotting this time for a Q&A session, so feel free to type down your questions in the chat box. You may opt to send your questions privately to any of our hosts if you would wish to ask anonymously. Do we have any questions for Ms. Reyes? Here we have one question here. What made you interested in entering the psychometry field?
First and foremost, it's because it's the first licensure exam that you can take after graduating in psychology, because I am very, of course, nowadays the competition in the professional field requires, actually right now, no, during this day, hindi po, you are not actually considered professional if you don't have a license. So since I am a fresh graduate and I want to prove something and I want to be called professional, of course, and also an advantage to in applying, I took the board exam in psychometrician. But actually, as what I have mentioned, right after taking up the psychometrician board exam, I took my master's degree in counseling and take another board exam. I took another board exam as a counselor. Now, honestly speaking, because I am not, hindi na was, I'm still not. I'm still not a fan of mathematics or statistics. I have a lot. As I start practicing the profession as a psychometrician, I start to appreciate the statistical field also. However, it's still a challenge to me until this moment. Pero as since I've been practicing this profession for quite a long time already, uh, it become it become very easy for me to conduct researches and to build psychometrics standardized tests or to create tests already. But at the moment, I'm back then I'm not really that interested in psychometry because again I'm not a fan of mathematics. But again, as what I have mentioned, as you go on kasi and try to practice, no, to be more familiar and well-rounded sa profession, mas nakikita mo yung halaga, yung significance, you come to appreciate yung significance ng profession mo, not just for yourself but also to other people. Like what I have mentioned, because of my career as a psychometrician, I came to have I had the chance to interact and have a lot of learnings from other people because I do evaluate different types of people regardless of their mental health condition. So from their stories, from interacting with them, I came to appreciate that hindi lang pala to math, hindi lang pala to about building examination, administering tests, but it's more on touching lives as well. Siguro that's my motivation. Kaya din I took up counseling as my master's degree and my field of specialization. It's because I became very touched dun sa purpose ng career ko. Being in psychology, no, dear students, it's not just about, of course, being professional and able to do therapies and counseling, but being in the field of psychology and social sciences, you should be a you should be you're in the profession of serving other people. That's really the main point of it. You are there to have a heart to serve other people, not just to earn money, of course, but to also touch lives and assist them in their everyday needs, especially during this pandemic. I believe most of us can relate that aside from the physical aspect that is endangered and until this moment, no, na na-challenge sa atin because of the pandemic, it's also the mental health of most of our of the most Filipinos right now. It's mental health din, no? And kahit ngayon, I was able to really appreciate na talagang importante ang profession ko as a psychometrician, because without this one, right, we cannot actually, kayo, di ba, na-try nyo nang mag-take ng test and you come to actually na-excite pa kayo na, hala, ano kaya yung personality ko? Ano kaya yung, what is my IQ? What is my aptitude? Where am I good? What is my preferences? What career or job I can do, no? Right, like that. you're very excited. And every time I had the chance to interpret the result to my clients, I also see the same excitement over and over again. They're very excited to know more about themselves. And because of that, I feel that it's very important and significant to be very to really do my job well. Of course, again, sabi ko nga, it's tawag dito, it's about psychological well-being already of a person. That's it. May I read other questions?
We actually have another question here. Thank you so much, Miss Era. I am so glad to know about the specific field we did not know existed. Are there any specific companies in the Philippines that hire those who have obtained this specific license?
Specific companies, actually, as what I have mentioned, no, in the field of in our government offices, actually PNP, AFP, if you are familiar with those, and even the SWD and DOH, yung mga government agencies natin, they are actually hiring ang mga psychometricians. And also psychodiagnostic clinics, rehabs, mental health hospitals, especially those companies, they are really hiring psychometricians because as what I have mentioned, this is the initial part of the process when conducting treatments or counseling to them, to our patient who have mental health challenges. So in that way, psychometricians are the ones who actually administer the test and conduct interview or evaluation to them. And also NBI, if I'm not mistaken, yes, NBI. Other OFW clinics, I have also colleagues or friends working there, OFW clinics. And also actually almost everywhere kasi as long as there's employees or mga tao that needs to be evaluated, psychometricians are one of the psychometricians, and also psychologists, counselors. They are always the ones who are being looked for as part of the team in evaluating people.
Thank you so much. Now I have these two questions that I actually like to merge. Hi, Miss Era. Thank you so much for this wonderful eye-opening talk. I just have a quick question for you. What is the most fulfilling part of being a psychometrician? And there's also one here. What's the craziest or most unique experiences you had within your field?
Okay, let's start with the most fulfilling part. That's the moment when I had this one encounter with a student when I was still working in a university. She's very lost, if that's the right term. She don't know what to do. She keeps on transferring or shifting from one course to another. So she's already in her second year back then, but she's still not very I'm not sure what's the right term, but she called it she doesn't see herself on that job in the future. So since I am very well aware of the different standardized tests that I may administer to her, so that's the thing that I do. Binigyan ko po siya ng psychological test. I administer a psychological test to her. Then she answered it. Then as what I have mentioned, when I start interpreting the result to her, when I start explaining the result to her, she's very happy because according to her, that's the moment that she realized that hindi lang naman daw pala siya hindi lang naman siya aligaga, if that's the right term. Hindi lang siya parang hindi mapakali, but it's just that she doesn't really see herself on her current course. So I'm very happy to also share to you that currently she's a licensed attorney. She's already an attorney, and she came to after the evaluation of career evaluation that we did. She realized that she should take up AB political science. So she shifted from management. Imagine, management, nursing. That's the courses that she took already. Then she realized that she really want to be a lawyer, or the specific skills or competencies or the preferences that she currently have back then is in line in to become a lawyer. So yon, that's the point that I realized na that's really a significant may importance pala talaga yung course score, yung mga standardized tests na binibigay namin. The craziest thing is I had this encounter again with the student. By the moment that she entered the room, she told me different diagnosis of her condition. She said that she is bipolar with depression and schizophrenia. So imagine, no? Three mental health disorder, three mental disorder in one. So I asked her if do you really na-diagnose ka ba? Do you have like diagnosis from a doctor? And she said, no ma'am, I got it from Google because I am experiencing like this and like that. So I searched it through Google. Then ma'am, look at these symptoms. I all nararanasan ko po lahat yan. I was able to feel this way. So I diagnosed myself as those. Then I said to her, no, it's not the right way. You should not self-diagnose, sabi ko. And I explained to her the mechanics of the standardized test, or the one way to actually really see and evaluate kung ano ba yung mental health condition niya. So by that moment, she realized na hindi pala talaga tama na you're just going to rely on different symptoms na nakikita sa Google, because there's a lot of considerations and technicalities that you need to know para talaga ma-diagnose or masabi mo kung ano yung mental health condition mo. So yun, nag-self-diagnose siya. Pagpasok niya dun sa room, nagbabanggit na siya ng different diagnosis niya. But that's the most craziest thing. Kasi what? Oh, why are you here if you already know your conditions, no? Then that's the moment that again na-realize ko na psychometrics, or those tests can actually help a person to ease the uncertainties or the questions of his or her mental health status. So I also believe that that's very important and significant contribution to to the well-being of an individual.
And we have another question here. Hello, Miss. Good afternoon. Would just quickly ask what are one of the greatest struggles and challenges of entering the field of psychometry, and is it hard to discern information and data coming from the standardized tests that you provide for the individuals you may encounter within the field?
Actually, the most challenging part in conducting or administering a test is the construction, the making of the test. But after that, since the information and the data that you will collect from the standardized test is already given ganito kasi yan, students. If you already create the test per se, the items na sinasagutan natin, there is a corresponding interpretation on each item. So just an overview, each item has their corresponding categories, and each category has their corresponding meaning or interpretation. So hindi na siya mahirap intindihin. Mahirap lang siyang gawin because again, you need to do the categorization, you need to do the item analysis, the different technicalities of constructing a test. But after such, the test per se, when it's already published or nakapasa na siya dun sa mga psychometric standards para masabing standardized ang isang test, hindi na siya mahirap because it's already included on the construction of the data. Now, the only struggle, or the greatest struggle maybe, is the test construction. But after such, it's already easy DC.
And we have here another question. Is there a way to integrate psychometry with social media?
Definitely, yes. If I'm not mistaken, there was this study na kinandak wherein they tried to actually assess the personality of people using Twitter. If you are well aware, there are cookies that are implanted on your cellular phones, on your laptops, that can be used to trace your activities using those devices. And with such, there was a study I read back then wherein they categorize the personalities of people using Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. So, kung mapapansin nyo, class, there was, meron kayong, kunwari, no? Meron kayong kinlik na link sa website, sa isang website. Then, suddenly, makikita nyo siyang nag-appear na sa social media as suggestion, recommendations, or ads, right? So, it is those activities, those digital prints that you create, they tried to create a personality inventory from it. So it's very technical kung i-explain ko, but it's just that yung mga data na nakuha doon, okay, sa social media platforms ng respondents, ginamit siyang another basis to create the ethics or social media behavior or personality of an individual. But it's just, ano pa lang siya, no? Study pa lang siya. Again, study pa lang siya. So, hindi pa siya nagmamaterialize as a standardized test. As what I have mentioned, initial step to create a test is to first to have study, research based. So, currently, when I was able to read that study, there are still ongoing tests and categorization to actually materialize the standardized test about it.
And how do you apply your learning outside of your job?
Okay, outside of my job, maybe it's more on technicalities again ng psychometricians or the statistical treatment that you are actually applying during test construction. Kasi tandaan nyo, class, psychometricians talaga are very into standardized tests. So, masyado kaming particular dun sa material or sa tool. So, if you're going to ask me paano ko siya na-apply, it's more on the appreciation that there's a lot of considerations that you need to give in order to actually come up with an evaluation of a person. So, meaning, in an everyday aspect, we cannot really judge a person based on his or her initial action or one-time encounter, diba? Or his or her preferences. But it's more on having a holistic view of his or her self, right? And me as also a counselor, I always make sure na hindi ako magiging bias or subjective in interacting with different kind of people. Of course, 'di ba, as especially kayo, you're already in senior high school and junior high school. Social groups are already forming, meaning may mga barkada na kayo, right? May mga set of friends kayo wherein mas komportable kayo, mas feel yun na belong kayo. But there are also some students na very very particular in choosing friends. Sometimes nga they don't have group of friends. No, they just like to be alone or to have their individual time or me time, no? Then from there I realized that it doesn't mean na ganun yung isang individual, meaning wala siyang kasundo or wala siyang kaibigan or she or he is antisocial, but it's more of currently that is the thing that he needs or she needs, no? A personal space, a personal time to develop and grow as an individual. So uulitin ko, because of psychometrics and also even psychology, I came to appreciate that there's a lot of things that you need to take for consideration in evaluating an individual. And because of that, mas naging careful ako and cautious ako in interacting and making relationship to them. Because uulitin ko, we don't know kung ano yung pinagdadaanan ng mga tao, hindi natin alam kung ano ba talaga yung mga gusto nila or yung mga currently na pinagdadaanan nila. So you have to be very sensitive. So yun.
Now, looking at the time, there are too many questions, but however, this one will be the last one for the day. So how does psychometry impact society?
Okay, because psychometry or psychometrics is very particular in creating measuring tool to assess and even have an understanding of human behavior, human well-being in terms of intelligence, aptitudes, and personalities. I believe in a society, because there's a lot of different personalities, different cultures, different ethnics na nag-exist sa isang society. Psychometrics will give you, again, it's a helping tool to assess and to have an understanding of the differences of each individual. At the same time, to promote awareness of individual differences.
Thank you so much, Miss. Once again, we would like to take this chance to show our gratitude to Miss Reyes for sharing with us her invaluable time and her expertise on this subject. So thank you so much for helping us complete the very first MI Online Expo, Take a Strand.
Before you go, please make sure to answer the feedback form that is located down below on the description. Aside from that, we would like to thank our sponsors as well, White Breeze Palawan Hotel, Food Talk Supermart, and the Regalado family for their help. Once again, thank you for your participation. Signing out, Batch of 2021.